Welcome back to Effluvium. I have a returning guest, as this season has many returning guests, some of my favorite guests from the first two seasons. We have Chester Gibs. Chester, can you just nod to make sure I pronounced your name correctly? I keep on. Is it Gibbs or Jibs? Gibbs? Oh God, I went Jibs. Sorry, Chester. Chester Gibbs is joining us. He's backstage. We're going to have a conversation on fragrance and expression. We're also going to be talking about our relationships to fragrance. So some philosophical stuff that is involved in this particular conversation. So we're going to do some rumination on those two different topics. And then in the second hour, we're going to be sharing three fragrances, each of us, three fragrances each, that have some particular meaning to us, which should be enlightening. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. And we have Filippo saying hello. And are you referring to this, the music, the Les Baxter theme? It's actually from the KPM series. I forgot who actually composed it. Shame on me. Since I'm such a scatterbrain. But it's from the KPM Music Library series. It is called Swallowtail. Philippe, hello. Scent of the Day, Jubilation 25. We have three people who are tuned in. We're going to give it a little bit of time for people to start filing on in and joining the chat as well. And then we're going to bring in Chester and we're going to start having our conversation. And just a reminder to folks, don't forget to hit the like. At the moment, let's take a look. And we have 5 likes at the moment. And we're going to try to aim for 40 likes by the end of the stream. I'd be very happy if we have more likes than that. And likes are important for YouTube. It helps to make this content visible to those who are doing a particular search, or if they're just curious about fragrance content. And these kinds of things will actually come up. And it's great. It makes the channel visible. Just by doing that like, it makes a big difference. You might think, oh, it's just one like. But when the likes add up, it leads to much more visibility. It works for the algorithm, and we're all slaves to the algorithm. I always think of the Grace Jones song, slave to the rhythm, slave to the algorithm. All right, enough of me being goofy. Let's take a look here and see who is joining in the chat. Pat Lester, great to see you, my friend. Looking dapper there. A dapper pooch. And we have 4 people who are tuned in at the moment. We're going to get this conversation started soon. I also just want to remind folks of Buy Me a Coffee. 6 cups gets you a sample pack from my enormous collection of samples. 12 cups gets you 4 a bottle grab bag plus a sample pack. And that is US only, please. If you would like to contribute a coffee, even if it's just one is equal to $5 US. Just visit the link that is pinned at the top of the chat. Filippo says, Scent of the Day, Notre Dame by Filippo Sorcinelli. I think you would like a lovely orange blossom incense. Very nice. Okay, without further ado, let's get this conversation started. I am going to bring in Chester, and we're going to have a nice chat. Hello.
Hi there, Joseph. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine. It's a little late here, but I'm fine. Had a really nice day, although it's very rainy here. But been cleaning up my studio, throwing out lots of ingredients which have been lying around and
Mm.
can't be used anymore. So it's a perfect day to do such kind of things.
Well, that's actually kind of an interesting topic within itself, the disposal of ingredients. And
Yeah.
when it is decided that they need to be disposed beyond some of the obvious reasons, I imagine, just from my knowledge, if we are understanding of the expected expiration or, if it is past a certain level of freshness and usability, is that a
Yeah.
that we decide that it is time for it to go. So what is your do you mind if I pick your brain on that? I know that it's not on our agenda,
No, no,
but
no, no problem.
that's actually an interesting topic. So what helps you determine when it's time to let go of some of the fragrant ingredients?
Well, obviously, if they don't smell good anymore, which sometimes is hard to tell because if you like smell them out of the bottle or the blotter, they may seem right, but then if you dilute them, if you add to something, you see that they don't react as they did, say, like 2 years before. So, yeah, so mainly it's some of the florals, some of the citruses, that just don't smell good anymore. Expiration date that is usually on the bottles doesn't always mean a thing because in the case of, say, patchouli or vetiver, you can keep that for a really long time. I think very often it just gets better over time. Um, but yeah, in the case of my citruses, I keep them in the fridge. I keep them cold, same as white flowers. But I've been smelling a lot of stuff, and sometimes I buy them and then the packaging isn't just right. So a lot of air slips somehow into the bottle, and that it either changes the scent of the ingredients, or sometimes you see things they become a solid, whereas I got them as a fluid. So and then I try to see if I can heat them and reuse them. And sometimes it's the case, sometimes not. And at one point, I just have to chuck stuff out because it's getting too much, and I need some space in my lab and in my mind as well. Otherwise, I can't create.
Yeah, I find that some materials will actually start to corrode. Like if you have them sitting around for a while, they'll actually start to chemically change. So
Yeah.
they'll burst out of the container that they're in, which doesn't look like a good sign. And I'll dispose of those because there's obviously some breakdown of the chemical elements that's causing that kind of corrosive effect to the containers that they're in. Um, and also, I've noticed that as well with some scented materials, they'll start to solidify. And
Yeah.
some of them, it's like expected for them to solidify depending upon the temperature. Um, like certain sort of like cinnamic derivatives will sometimes do that, and anethol derivatives will sometimes do that. But then others, they'll sort of start to solidify just from age. Like there's
Yeah.
just something going on chemically where they no longer have that sort of viscosity that they used to have. Very interesting stuff. Do you sometimes dispose of materials because you no longer find a need for them, or maybe you have a surplus more than what you really should have sitting around?
Yeah, sometimes I buy stuff and then I think, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me get 30 ml of that. And then it turns out to be either like so strong that I that 30 ml takes ages to use for me.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't throw it out. I'll just swap it with someone else who I know that makes perfumes. But then yeah, that's a reason to you kind of get rid of it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I've done that too, where I've gotten far more of a quantity than I would ever really need in multiple lifetimes of perfume production.
yeah.
Like things like certain sort of very strong pyrazines, where I thought, well, 30 mil, that should work for me. But it turns
Exactly.
out I probably only needed 1 milliliter to
Yeah.
dilute. Yeah, yeah. We have Clear here. Hi, regular supportive viewer of Effluvium and supporter of the channel. Great to have you here. Um, so let's get started on some of the topics that we had for discussion. And I was really taken by the choices that you have because I feel like by discussing these things, it really makes it open ended, and it really can help us kind of go in many different directions.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, it can be almost like philosophical or even spiritual in a sense, because I'm not afraid of exploring those layers as well. So the relationships that we have to fragrance. Um, I think that we typically think of the average fragrance enthusiast just enjoying fragrance for some of the external elements of it. What kind of attention it will give us, what kind of compliments it will give us, what kind of social cachet, if you will. But then there are other people who are enthusiastic about fragrance on a level that may be a little bit more personal. You know what I mean? Just having that association, um, mnemonic association, memory association, or what it does with serotonin or dopamine. What's going on in the brain, the chemical responses to fragrance. And I think that's just a fascinating topic. So tell me, Chester, what were some of the things that you had in mind about having that sort of like more layered and deeper relationship to fragrance?
You mean when I came up with the topic?
Yeah,
Is
when you
that
came up with the
all
topic,
right?
exactly.
Okay. Well, I find it interesting. Well, first of all, I think the three topics that we chose, I think they connect to each other. Like, what do you look for in a fragrance? What do you how does it communicate with you? And the other two topics, I think they really have things to do with each other, like perfume reviews as well. So, but I picked the topic because I find that when I started collecting fragrances, which was, I think, around 2012, and when I say collecting fragrances, I mean like diving a little bit more into the history of perfumery, iconic perfumes, and niche perfumes. I started sampling a lot of niche perfumes because they were so expensive, and I thought like I'm going to buy a bottle, but I have to like thoroughly investigate. And I noticed as I was doing that, it was actually the first time when I was really smelling and focusing on what I felt, more like different from like if this is a nice perfume or not. I was like really thinking, what do I feel? So does it make me feel calm? Um, does it make me feel happy? Does it give me energy? And so I started to connect these kinds of feelings to fragrance and perfumes. And as I told you in the last time we chatted on Effluvium, that I started using them for my drawings as well, because then like I smell something, I have this feeling, and therefore I'm in a mood. It's like putting on a record, and music can really put you in a mood. And I think a scent has the same. So I already had that connection between my, let's say, emotional feelings and fragrance. So this is why I chose this subject, because I think everybody has their own reason for picking a particular fragrance, or when you already have a collection, like choosing one for a particular moment. And you could wear them for so many different reasons. So I'll give you a few very clear examples. So I have a fragrance here standing next to me, which I will discuss later. And that is a typical perfume that I wear when I'm home alone, when it's quiet, when I feel the need to calm down, which I can do with a cup of tea. But then to top it off, I just spray this perfume, and it just sort of like, gives me this really relaxed, almost like meditative moment.
Mm.
So that is really what I use this perfume for. I never wear it during the day, also because it's such a subtle perfume that I feel it's very easily overpowered by the like daily things in your work and talking to people. So I want to give it space, so I wear it only at night when it's quiet around the house, and in those moments before going to bed, when I'm like, a little tired but still have enough energy to get this perfume to get to me. And another example, which is like the total opposite, I just returned from a trip to Japan and a holiday, really nice. And I visited the Isimiyaki shop in Ginza because I was going to buy a piece of clothing for my birthday, and I saw that they had these Isimiyaki perfumes lined out. Of course, I know it's better to buy them in Europe because they're produced in Europe, so it's much cheaper. And I thought, why not just get it here? Because it's like in the context of all these clothes, I'm on my Japan journey, and let's just use it every day and create this new memory with it. So I bought it,
Yeah.
and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was Lode Si Lom or Purom, I'm not sure, vetiver. And
Right. You mentioned this to me recently, this
yes, I
particular
did.
one.
And
Yeah.
I've really grown to love it. And I wouldn't say it's like the most groundbreaking, remarkable perfume I have. Actually, I mean, comparing to a lot of stuff I have, it is pretty, I would say, common. But having said that, it's so versatile, it's so wearable, it's like an easy grab. And now when I smell it, it just takes me back to Japan. So it's I just find all these entrances, if I could say that, that you can find into uh, wearing a perfume, and for whatever reason, they're really important. So, I mean, you put it on your skin, you make new memories with it. So it's for me at least, I suppose for you as well. It's important to consider what it is you're going to put on your skin and what it is that will take you to the future, because that's what it is.
Mm,
For me, it's like future perfume. You put them on and you create new memories. If I sell a perfume, as you know, I work in a perfume shop. I always say to people, like, congratulations with this perfume that is going to accompany you in your future memories. And so this is how I connect these fragrances. So, and I'm very curious always as to why people look for certain fragrances, and more curious even if they just concentrate on smelling the perfume and connecting it to their feelings, or to find something of themselves in that fragrance. Could be something
mm,
they've lost over time, or something they never knew that was inside them.
mm.
So, like, to really get into this fragrance and see something of valuable for the wearer. And I think that there's a lot of distraction when it comes to picking a perfume. You're very distracted by trends,
Right.
by packaging, and by reviews, which is also why I picked that topic,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
can a review can really sort of like melt into your mind, and could even like sort of um, it could make your experience better, because it can like confirm what you're feeling, that this is a great perfume that you've just chosen. On the
Right.
other hand, it could make you doubt yourself if you're a little insecure and you think like, oh, this review tells me this is a horrible perfume. One of the perfumes I enjoy most, it's Alamut by Lorenzo Villoresi. And
I
I
love
read a
Alamut.
review that just said it's best to avoid it, and I'm like, "What? I've got 3 bottles
Well,
of
who
it."
is it?
So
Luca? Luca Turin?
what's
I
yeah,
know
he
how
wrote.
much Luca Turin despises Lorenzo Villoresi for
Oh,
reasons I don't know.
I'm not
And
sure either.
I don't
Uh,
know. And I mean, it's his opinion and he's entitled to it. I wouldn't attack him for it. I mean, I remember recently there was some brouhaha where Luca completely blasted a perfume that a YouTube content creator, one of his fragrances for his line. Um, and that's the whim of Luca, though, you know?
Well, it is, as you say, it's
Yeah.
someone's opinion, but
Yeah.
what I do think is that as a consumer or as a fragrance lover, you should. It's okay to read reviews, but just stay focused on your feelings and
Right.
the sensation that you have when you smell something and how it communicates to you. Because in the end, that is the most important thing, and not what someone else thinks of what you're wearing, whether that is a good choice or not. I mean, it's like me criticizing I don't know, the decorations you have in your room or your clothes. I mean, who am I to say anything about that? If that is what makes you happy, um, I don't can't look into your brain. So I think
Yeah.
it's dangerous to be distracted by all this noise you have. Um,
So much noise.
so
It's
much
true.
noise, and
Yeah.
it's the opposite is also true. When you have like two or three perfumes and you have only the money to buy one, and you read the reviews, and like one gets really hyped up, like it's really great and it's really good value for money, it's very difficult to then not buy that perfume. So I think
Yeah.
to what are we looking for when we choose a perfume? I think that's a very important and valid question. I don't know. What are you looking for when you when you smell a perfume, or when you are what do you pay attention to? What's your connection to what you smell?
Well, that's a very good question, and I usually enjoy asking other people that question. I wanted to just go back to what you said about opinion, though, and then I'll return to that. And it is so important to see a reviewer as ultimately sharing their own opinion, and to never take what they say as gospel, even if you have developed an affinity for them and feel like they're an arbiter of great taste, that they're a tastemaker, or even, you know, some people say an influencer, but most of the time I just think influencers are trying to sell stuff. But those who are actually sitting down and writing a proper review, that if you find that your taste tends to align, then you'll find that they would be a good resource. But to not take everything they say as if it is untouched by, you know, a very personal bias, because all reviews have a bias to them. Speaking as a reviewer myself, there's going to be whole houses where I'm hard pressed to find something that's going to resonate with me, because I might not necessarily like the particular style of the perfumer or perfumers who are chosen to create for that house. But that is not to say that um, those particular perfumes are inferior in quality, or are not artful necessarily, with some exceptions in mind. I mean, there have been some instances where I've questioned whether or not there's competency, but that's mostly in the artisan realm. Because, as you know, Chester, we can have some people in the artisan world who are just, they have access to the materials and they're going to put things together, and it depends on whether or not they have the skill, and they may, still um, release a product, a finished product. So I think it's perfectly okay if somebody feels like they can discern that there's maybe something lacking in that. But that is not to say that other people um, are not capable of enjoying that work, even when somebody might discern that there may be some things that are lacking in those compositions. But that being said, getting back to my process as far as choosing something that resonates with me, it has evolved over time, and it has evolved based on the way that I have taken in information and knowledge about fragrance. That's evolved, because early on in my enthusiasm for fragrance, there really was only a few parameters involved. If you look back 20 years ago, we don't have, at that time, social media as a big component in driving what I'll choose to sample, or what I will consider to be uh, something that I would enjoy. But social media has played a very big part in that in the past
Yeah.
13, 14 years. I try not to get too influenced, too persuaded by that. It's easy to do that, especially when you have a lot of people who are content creators who talk about something as if it's, the second coming of perfume, and we've seen that. Um, and then I'll smell it, and I'm like, what am I missing here? I don't really see that or smell that. But for me personally, it has to evoke certain emotions and sensory sensations um, that remind me of the rawness and naturalism of life. It's the truth.
Okay.
So there are things that, if they're very futuristic and they don't evoke any of that at all, have a very difficult time responding well to it. There are some exceptions to that, but things that don't feel like they have a naturalism, and as many of us intelligent fragrance enthusiasts know, that doesn't involve naturals necessarily. It could be majority synthetics and some naturals that could feel that sense of naturalism, but
Yeah.
it's a kind of naturalism um, that can come from just your experience smelling your surroundings. Some of my favorite fragrances remind me of very deep seated memories from my past. I think those are the ones that, this will be a great segue into the next hour when we talk about the meaningful fragrances, right? The ones that really they resonate with me as far as what was around me in my youth.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to youth, those very early scent memories, um, which is why probably I am such a enthusiast for vintages, because the younger you are, you go back to be your youth, you were smelling a lot of other things in the ether than you smell today,
Yeah.
if you know what
True.
I mean.
Yeah.
Um, so I know that is a little bit unfocused and a bit rambling, but yeah, for lack of a more concrete explanation for what drives me, it is a certain sort of naturalism, and that could be a naturalism, and that could be a naturalism as far as flowers and plants and trees and woods and that sort of thing, but also sort of like a human naturalism as well.
Yeah.
Sunset remind me of warm skin and one's breath. Um, you know, things like I love chypris, because chypris often involve a lot of that. You think of
Yeah.
things like
Me too.
labdanum and costus and resins and patchouli and musks. And there is a certain natural rawness to a lot of those that I think is just that there is this almost a visceral appeal to those things. So that's what I tend to be drawn to. I don't know. I hope that's a good enough answer.
No, it's a good enough. It's a good enough answer. Yeah. For me, it's like I kind of like the polarity of scents. So I tend to um, go towards scents that how shall I say it, that I like and they annoy me at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I have friends like that, but they're like the most, I don't know, sort of they're like sort of pull and push. You're like, I find that always very fascinating. And then there I
Yeah.
have some perfumes that just give me peace, like literally,
Mm.
like I smell that I'm like, okay, now I'm sort of like really relaxed and I feel calm. And I would say a way to describe it is, do you know the feeling after you have cried? Like you're done crying,
Yes.
your tears are, you're finished. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's like a really good feeling because you feel calm. There's nothing else to cry about because you can't. So it's just this calmness. And for me, that is the beginning of comfort. And with some perfumes, I get that feeling. So it's either sort of like this push and pull, sort of like these little irritations that fascinate me when I find them in a perfume, or this total calmness. really like that. So I'm
Mm.
kind of like looking for these two opposites. If I've never found them in one fragrance, but these two groups are among my collection. They're there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what's fascinating about the catharsis of crying and what happens in the brain. Crying is a way of putting someone into a parasympathetic state. I often feel that after you cry, or after I cry at least, it's much like being given sort of like a safe and healthy sort of sedative. You feel calm, you
Yeah,
feel relief.
exactly. And I find always in that particular moment, I don't literally have to have cried. Sometimes it's just that feeling that comes over me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, so do I want to get out of this and put something cheerful on? Or am I fine with just like staying there for a little bit longer and then picking a perfume as a little blanket to sort of like cover me in this space? So I like that from that point to either stay in this sort of mood or just pick something that lifts me up, whatever is necessary at a particular moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I found,
interesting. No, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, no, sorry to interrupt, but I find also in marketing and in selling perfume, the emphasis is very often on joy and never on pain,
Or
and
sorrow.
or
Yeah.
sorrow or
Unless it's Serge
sadness.
Lutens or
Yeah,
something.
well, yeah, but but I mean, like a good perfume can carry you through all these emotions that you
Sure.
have. You may buy it
Yeah.
thinking, oh, it's a lovely summery perfume, makes me feel happy, but you have a life and it's not always happy. So you're just might be wearing something and feeling very sad. And
Mm.
so, I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to create perfumes even for like when you're down, like, or when you're
Right.
sad and you want to communicate with a perfume. Oh, it's all right to be sad. And you can wear this while you're sad and enjoy it while you're sad. I mean, I kind of like to think that there's a comfort in certain fragrances.
Right. And there's a certain bottling up that takes place when you avoid those emotions that at
Yeah,
first
sure.
seem uncomfortable. And if we embrace those emotions and hold them and sit with them, I think it's great to consider, art in the way that it can help facilitate those feelings. We think about the movies or films that we might watch when we're in that mood, or the kind of visual art that we may appreciate, the music especially. We might listen to different kinds of music if we're in more of a melancholy
Yeah,
or pensive mood.
true.
And likewise, perfume. There are perfumes that may be well suited for that state of mind where it complements the way that we feel and it makes the way that we feel easier to cope with.
Yeah.
If we don't have that accompaniment, if we might feel a sense of isolation, we might feel as though we don't have a way of getting through it. But finding a means of getting through it through enjoying beautiful art or sensory experiences is something to consider. And I can think of so many different fragrances that would feel that way, some more obvious than others, where I'm in that mood and I just want something that complements that mood and will help me traverse that mood until I'm feeling differently. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, yeah. Um, Jean-Qui Scent, Michi, hello. Scent of the Day Amazon, vintage parfum from Hermes. Um, oh, isn't that a lovely one? That could be a good one for a melancholy feeling, actually. Or something like Sir Lutin's. Oh, goodness. Why am I drawing a blank? I had it on the tip of my tongue. De Profundis, or Après L'Onde from Guélan, or even something that feels sort of damp and rainy and cool, like Osmat Yuna from Hermes as well. Um, yeah, I can think of a few that would be suitable for that. And this speaks to the expectations that we have with the fragrances that we already know and love. But I think it's also interesting, the expectations that we have if we're seeking out something new.
Yeah.
And I haven't been doing that as much because I have plenty of things to enjoy as it is. I'm much more fastidious about seeking out new things. And with this market, it's like hard to even keep track of what's coming out. But if we have an expectation to add some sort of new addition to our life, what would you say are some of the things that the um, basic criteria in a fragrance that you would look for if you were to decide this is I'm responsive to this, I'm connecting with this? What would you say are some of those basic things?
Basic.
Yes, not too basic. Not basic isn't like but the right kind of fundamentals, if you'd like.
Well, I like duality in scents, in
Yeah,
perfumes, because that's what life is about. So I kind of like
duality.
that, duality, contrast. So that's what I'm looking for in perfumes. And something very simple. When we go back to our youth, one of the first fragrances that was literally forced upon me was um, 4711,
Mm.
the eau de cologne, because I used to be car sick very often. So my mom used to like press handkerchief with that eau de cologne in my nose. And so this was quite traumatic for me in the beginning. But later I found out that the scent of cologne has been present like throughout my life, like on
Mm.
holidays in France, in Spain, where it's very common still to the day to just like douse yourself in lots of eau de cologne. So that sort of sentiment that I find in this type of perfumes that have this eau de cologne type structure,
Mm-hmm.
they speak to me because they mix both joy and pain for me. So like the joy of these
Mm.
holidays of, the Mediterranean sun, but exactly like not feeling well and having it there, somebody who means well but it's not necessarily making you feel better. But that sort of contrast in your life experience, I find it's fascinating that of course that's all in my mind. It's not in the fragrance, it's in my mind. But I
Mm.
find it fascinating that I always find that in like a citrusy eau de cologne type of perfume. So yeah, so that's duality in contrast, I would say, in perception and in feeling. And with some perfumes, I will find it in the way the ingredients are put into the fragrance. Like it's a really nice
Mm.
contrast of things you wouldn't expect
Mm-hmm.
together in a composition. So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, duality. That's so important to me as well. And I often refer to that when I'm writing my own reviews. If I if I experience that sense of duality, um, and also, and I often use music analogies as well, the dissonance and the consonance. I feel like there's way too much consonance in newer perfume, and there isn't that sort of dissonance that turns into a resolve. I think that's what's beautiful about classic perfumery, is that you have that bit of dissonance, especially in the top notes, where it would arrest you. It would take you by the collar and say, "Love me, take me in," you know, make me part of you.
yeah,
Aldehydes and sharp and acrid and pungent and just like something to invigorate, to make you feel like, yeah, you're alive. I'm reminding you, perfume sometimes remind you that you're alive, you're a living being, you're a feral human animal. And we were so responsive to that culturally for so long. And I don't know, I don't want to get too much into the, the theories as to why maybe we're losing some of that. But I find in a lot of more recent perfume, it's sort of like, we're going to keep this consonant. You're going to you're going to be protected from the unknown. You're going to be protected from that duality, because that duality, that unknown. Oh, we don't want something that's unknown. We want to make sure that we're as comfortable as possible. And it would be interesting to really delve into and explore how culturally we've changed in that expectation, that maybe we wanted a perfume to just brace us and make us feel like, whoa, to get that strong emotion. Because some perfumes nowadays, I don't feel like they elicit that strong emotion. It's more sort of like, let's give it to the focus group and see if they feel uncomfortable. And if at least one person in that focus group feels the littlest bit uncomfortable, then let's scrap it and not say to ourselves, well, you know what, there is that one person, but there are some other people who are saying, I'm kind of enjoying that duality between this bitterness and this sweetness and this dryness with this sort of dampness that is cohabiting. Um, I think you make a really great point about that. And there's something that in visual art is referred to as chiaroscuro, where it's like darkness. And the darkness is given more meaning because of the light and the shadows with the reflection of other things. You have that chiaroscuro. And chiaroscuro in perfume is what gives it dimension. And I'm not seeing very much of that chiaroscuro as well. It's just sort of like that, like very, very linear. There's a
Yeah.
linearity. But I think that's what I look for as well. Something that just sort of it counters what you're expecting.
Yeah. I think that what you're saying is true, that a lot of fragrances um, might not have that punch that a lot of older fragrances have, or
I
vintage
know yours
fragrances.
has that punch, and that's what I like about the one that you did
It's
for.
very polarizing.
I love that
It's
though.
very
That's why
polarizing.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually, when I was asked to produce it or to create it for the brand, I was giving the freedom to a creative freedom to create a perfume. So it wasn't a brief. So, but there was, of course, the owner of the brand who was going to like smell the different versions and like say, oh, a little less of this or a little bit more of that. But in the end, I had my own say in how I wanted it to smell, and I was making two, like they were going sort of like next to each other. I was developing them, and it was going to be one of the two. And so I had some people like evaluating the two, and there was this one that's just easier, and then there was the other one that you've smelled, Walk With Me perfume,
Mm.
which was riskier, I would say. I thought it was a tricky perfume, and I thought like, well, this might just be my first and last chance to ever have anything released. So will I do like sort of like something likable or try something risky? And I had really worked hard on that perfume and trying to get that freshness which you smell in the beginning, like this
Mm.
sort of green, bitter, spicy freshness, and have it contrast with the more sweet, creamy tones and the leather, while remaining sort of a hint of freshness sort of sticking through it. But yeah, it's a tricky perfume because I don't think it's for everyone. It's
Mm-hmm.
you like it or you don't. I've not had one person say, man, no, it's like you love it or you don't. And
Yeah.
but it was, yeah, that was hard. But I think that has a lot of duality too in it. But
Sure.
that was very scary for me to make that perfume and have it published, let's say. I thought it was
Mm.
really, you feel so vulnerable too. I do at least. So
Yeah, it does
yeah.
involve a lot of vulnerability, especially when you're giving that opportunity to have that kind of creative freedom. It's sort of like the world is your oyster, and what do you do with that? And to take that kind of risk, especially today, with the market being that it is, I think it's commendable. And I would far prefer, even if something didn't resonate with me personally, that something would elicit some sort of response than something to be, that's okay, that's nice, that's a decent amber or Chypre or fougere. It's a nice shot at something. It's a nice concept, kind of color by numbers. And what you did is definitely not that. It is a testament to your vulnerability, and I think that's what makes it um, really appealing to me. Um, so even if you don't have a favorable response, like, oh, that's too intense for me, or like, it's a response. It gets it. I mean, like, that's what great art, I think, does. Even if somebody dislikes it, it's like, wow, they have an opinion on it. It it is giving an impression. Um, Whereas, you might have something that's just sort of middle of the road, and you're playing it safe. And I'm always happy when people are choosing not to play it safe in the perfume world and taking those risks. And maybe they don't pay off. Maybe they're not as, big of a seller, and they're not that popular, but they definitely end up making a mark regardless. You know what I mean? Not to say I don't know how well yours is selling or what kind of attention it's getting, but for me personally, I was really struck by it in a good
Oh,
way.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We have
It's nice to
Jamal.
hear.
Yeah, of course, Jamal in the chat here. He had a comment that I wanted to highlight earlier, and he has a subsequent one too. Just trying to. Oh, here we go. Chester, didn't Kleistov tell you Farnesol is useless while making Walk with Me? Um, that's his comment. I don't know if you wanted to react to that with a
Um,
little.
I I didn't put it in there. I think I didn't put it in the formula.
Yeah. And then how
So
many mods at the end? Very
at
inquisitive.
the end, yes. Well, tell you something. I started years ago, I think in 2016, creating, well, getting into perfume creation. A very simple reason: my perfume collection was just getting too big and too expensive. Bottle is easily 150, $200,
Yes.
and I thought, like, since I love tuberose, I thought, why not try and make for myself a bottle of like a tuberose perfume for myself. So this is how that started. Like, rather than taking my money to a company that produces perfumes or a shop, try and make it myself. Because I mean, I've been trained in visual arts, and I've actually never considered doing olfactive art. Um, so this is how I found a teacher, and I did some summer schools in Graz, and it took me some years to like really get into the process. And but one of the first things I made was a very early mod of Walk With Me. Was already in, I think, in 2018. It smelled nothing like what it smells now. So if I don't count all these like in between experiences, I would say that from the point where I decided I'm going to take this formula that I made but never finished, and I'm going to continue on it from there. So it already had lots of mods, but I did not think of like numbering them, and I wasn't really, let's say, structured. I'm quite a chaotic creator. But I made, when I decided, okay, this is going to be like the backbone for the formula, I think I did like 45 mods, and that is what I understand, not even a lot, but for me it was 45.
Mm.
And then I decided it was going to be, in the end, after 45, that 35 was the best one, the one I just liked most.
Oh.
So I went back 10 mods to the one that you are smelling now.
Hello, Tom. Tom says these days too many perfumers are all painting the same lighthouse. I really appreciate risk taking. Yeah, I can really appreciate risk taking. I can appreciate somebody who wants to push the boundaries of what would be expected in any sort of medium. Um, and I think that often those risks can pay off. You know, they may not pay off in the most obvious ways, but I think that they still can nonetheless. Um, I want to get back to self-expression. So, how does a perfume reflect on how we want to project ourselves in the world? Because self-expression is only
Mm,
self-expression if we have others who experience that expression,
that
you
is
know?
true.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very true.
yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think I've spent so much time conceptualizing and intellectualizing and writing about fragrance and sitting with it and thinking about what I smell and how I feel that I may have neglected somewhat how that would be a form of self expression. Whereas many people, that is a big part of it. You know, they want to wear fragrance as they would wear clothing for other people.
Hmm.
You know, and or whatever sort of hat they choose to wear or shoes they choose to wear. Their perfume is part of their ensemble, or how it would reflect their personality. You know, and being that I have explored so many different kinds of fragrances from so many different time periods and styles. It's almost like I feel like I become sort of a chameleon in a sense because I really have a very widespread sort of taste. But I guess if I were to reduce that to you know maybe some of my favorite perfumes that I think resonate with me the most, it would be like I said earlier. It pertains to what I said earlier, that I'm a very introspective and spiritual and a spiritual person who's really connected to the natural world. So in the end, it's fragrances that tend to impart that sensibility, you know, and that's not limited. So when people hear that, they think, well, you must be interested in those natural perfumes, that the ones that are um artisan perfumes. And of course there's some lovely artisan perfumes, but there can be even mainstream fragrances that evoke that as
Yeah,
well.
sure. I think
So,
there's a lot of mainstream
or
fragrances
designer
or
or
designer fragrances that,
commercial.
yeah, that's a really are, um, I would say, brilliant, or like serve the purpose of expressing yourself. And
Right.
like a very simple example is that when I was young, I told you this before, I was very much, and I still am very much drawn to perfumes that were typically marketed towards women, and especially those
Mm-hmm.
vintage white floral perfumes. Like the bigger the white floral, the better. And
Right.
um, I felt when I was a teenager a bit, I wouldn't say embarrassed, but it was kind of weird to go into a perfume shop. That was already a big thing at the time because it was expensive, and like a teenager spending money on a perfume, and
Right.
then having to say, no, I don't want this man's perfume. I want this perfume for women, that I liked particularly. So I really like Lulu. I like
Yes.
Gloria Vanderbilt. I really like these
Those are
perfumes.
some
And
bold
so, I mean,
ones.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, that's for me, I think like to not give in, but just like say, no, I like these perfumes. I want to wear them. I think that's already a part of self-expression, just like wear what you want to wear. I think that's what it starts with. And you can communicate with what you are wearing in many ways. So, like a very nice, bold perfume I love wearing from time to time is Fracas by Robert Piquet. It's just such a statement perfume, and it's everything except subtle. But I just love that type of perfume. Um, when I went back to Indonesia, or when I went to Indonesia for the first time in the beginning of the 90s, it's a country full of smells also because of the temperature, but I
Right.
smelled so many white flowers and I thought like, oh, so it's not so weird that I love perfumes with that have white flowers in them because my mom loved these. It's apparently part of my DNA. And I was really nice to see that, oh, this love for white flowers is not something that I just imagined myself to have, but it's actually something that was passed upon me. And so, yeah, so I like to use these floral perfumes as a way to express myself. And, but I think also a perfume, you can really put it on as if it were a costume.
Sure.
Before I started working in the fragrance industry, I worked for quite a long time for an airline here in the Netherlands. And my job was to bring all the bad news to the clients. So to say, like, oh, your flight is
Mm,
canceled, it's been delayed 24 hours, so whatever. So, but I had these selections of perfumes before going to work, in my uniform, and they were sort of like distant perfumes. So they were like sort of, I would call them like my bad message perfumes,
ah,
so they wouldn't reveal too much about me as about my personality. So there
right.
wouldn't be white florals, there wouldn't be like cozy, nice, warm, ambery perfumes. There would be like, I would say, eau de cologne type perfumes, but cold, because you have these eau de
Ah,
cologne type perfumes that are like solar and warm
right,
and bright,
right,
but it'd
right.
be more like distant, cold, sort of like business like perfumes,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because I felt very vulnerable when you have like 50 passengers shouting at you. It's very,
Oh
you have
God,
to,
yeah.
man up. And
Right,
these
right.
perfumes helped me, because they smelled distant. They had this sort of like energetic, let's go get 'em vibe about it. But they were more like a costume, like a defense mechanism, than that they were something that I used to express myself. So there are like different types of ways of using a perfume. And a very interesting example I'd like to share with you all. Um, about a year ago, in the perfumery where I work in Amsterdam, this lady came in the store, and she was looking for a masculine perfume, but for herself. And she
Ah,
explained me that she was a lawyer and she had so many male colleagues, and she said, I just don't want to smell like Lily of the Valley. I want something um like masculine. I want to like have this masculine energy about me in scent, but not in dress, not in her makeup,
right,
but in sense, she wanted this sort of ready to fight energy
right,
in her perfume. Thought that was very interesting. I thought yeah, you can really approach a scent like that. You can use it to express yourself. You can use it to make you happy, to comfort yourself when you're just sad, but you could easily pick it as a costume. Yeah, so you could be like completely innocent looking and wear something super naughty and sexy, or the opposite. I think that's very interesting. You can really play on a very subtle, nearly subconscious level with the messages that you emit with your fragrance that you wear.
right, right.
So how do you feel about that?
I'm very approving of it, and I love the idea of somebody who can maybe express themselves um, in a way that contrasts with how they appear or who they are. I love that example of the woman who chooses something that may be more perceived as more culturally masculine, which would contrast how she appears. Like she
Yeah.
isn't, she isn't butch,
No, not at
but
all.
what she wears is sort of a butch kind of smell. And then that ends up sort of transforming what it is because the context is different. So it sheds sort of like a different light on that fragrance, if you'd like, that you maybe notice things about the fragrance that you hadn't before because you're so used to smelling that fragrance on somebody who might appear more conventionally masculine. So when you smell it on somebody who's more conventionally feminine, it brings out qualities that maybe you hadn't noticed before. You know what I mean? And that's why I much like yourself, even though I came to it much later, I wasn't as brave as you, and I really didn't even occur to me when I was younger to to try white florals because at that time I thought, well, that I was very much into adhering to the idea that fragrances were only to be worn by the gender in which they're marketed. So when I was younger, I wouldn't even have dared to imagine wearing something that had heavy white florals and tuberose and lily of the valley and gardenia and you name it. But now I take great pleasure in wearing those, and it is sort of a form of exploration because I've never really naturally felt like I had a very strong feminine side to me, but not to say that I don't have femininity because I think that we all have that duality, but I never really had that part of me. And it was almost like I was able to tap into an aspect of me that I wasn't aware of by wearing perfume. That was the way of my exploring it because I didn't really have an experience. I didn't really have a desire to explore it in dress, in clothing. Like
No.
female clothing never appealed to me, and maybe other forms of females or feminine self-expression didn't. But then I found the one that maybe did appeal to me, and it sort of dispelled those notions of what it means to be feminine and masculine, and helped sort of demystify that, if you will. Like, these things are, these fragrances really, are just culturally, these scents are just culturally tied to gender expression. And now some of my favorite notes are things like rose and lily of the valley and gardenia and so forth. Um, and I will wear them publicly. And I will
No.
tell you, like, nobody ever says to me, like, is that a woman's perfume you're wearing? I've never had anybody
No.
say that
Well, I
to
mean,
me.
it's so it's just so stupid who gets to decide what is masculine or feminine. It's like if you go into a museum and I will tell you, okay, right, Joseph, you're born a man, so I think I suggest you turn to the left. That's where the art is that's meant for you, and then your sister goes to the right. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Well, I think it's important in our culture right now also to normalize those explorations in gender expression without putting them into these tight boxes too. I mean, that can be so constrictive. Like if you're a young person who is attracted to things that would be normally to the opposite gender,
mhm.
that it is okay that you are who you are, who is interested in that, and it doesn't mean anything other than that necessarily. And I think that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Algebraist asks, which masculine perfume did that particular woman pick?
Well, I remember because it was a very memorable lady. She picked by the French house Rapin, the Orchid Man.
Hmm.
That's the one she chose.
So, what is the name of it again? Because
I can write it in the chats,
okay,
maybe.
great.
I think yes. Oh, no, well, I write it to you because I don't know how to do it in the
Oh,
group
and
chat.
I can, yeah.
The
If you do it in the
Orchid Man, the Orchid Man. Yes, just copy paste it.
okay. Fapin. Oh, okay. All right. Here we go. And I'm sharing that with everyone here. So Fapin, the Orchid Man, which I've never experienced. Now I'm kind of curious about it. Oh, and we have a comment from ENSR 939. Reflection Man was my first experience with masculine white floral perfume, looking to step up. Yes, that's true. And this is the myth too, is that florals were never really a big element in perfumes marketed to men. It's funny how like you can really delve into this conversation and realize the lines are very blurred because
Yeah, I mean,
you
it's
know
very cultural as well. I mean, like
yeah
what's considered a masculine perfume, say, like in the north of America or in Europe and in the Middle East. I mean, they're like,
yeah
it's very different. Yeah, I think it's for you should just smell something and you like it, and it just appeals to
right
you. And but in my experience, I found that in the perfumery, women tend to much easier go for, let's say, masculine type perfumes than the other way around. Even if
mm,
I let guys blind smell perfumes, and then I had one, and his number one choice was one by Houbigan's. It was Quelques Fleurs Jardin Secret. And then because he saw the bottle, and in the perfume, I think it's called the collection privé. It has like this
yes
little what do you call it? I don't know the word in English. Like a little bow tie, like sort of
yes
thing on
yeah
it. It looks like very feminine, the bottle. And
yes
so he thought, no, I'm gonna take my second choice, which was I think it was Ganymede from uh, Marc Antoine Barba. And I thought it was such a pity because he really loved that perfume. And yeah, it's just the bottle. I mean, it's not.
Right. It is interesting to think that if that bottle were to be in something more architectural and
Yeah,
angular
like a
and
square bottle with
right,
a
right,
robust cap, then
right.
would have been okay.
Right. Which is
Yeah.
funny because then, which reminds me as well, there's often fragrances marketed to women that men mistake for being marketed to men because the bottle doesn't look particularly feminine. And then it's sort of a mind fuck for them because, well, oh, it looked like it was for men. And then they happen to find out that it was marketed to women. So there's this cognitive dissonance. It's like, well, I expected, if it were to be marketed to women, that would be like soft curves and feminine and but that's not necessarily true. You think about, like you were mentioning, like, something by Robert Piguet. You could look at some of those bottles. They don't look like they're particularly, gendered.
No.
Bandit. I mean that's an interesting topic when it comes to gender and perfume too, because there's nothing that today we would necessarily consider that to be conventionally feminine, but there was still a femininity to it in its own respect. That's what's funny about this discussion is it's like, how do we really define it? How is it really defined? It's just based on um, a set of codes, I guess, that we associate. um, I'm trying to think of some others where somebody, where a fella thought, well, I thought it was for women because it looked like it was. I thought it was for men because the bottle looked like it was a man's cologne, a man's fragrance. But then, my wife told me it was actually for women, and then I just couldn't wear it anymore. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just that idea of being associated with it can really cause some men to recoil. But you're right; it doesn't really happen as much with women. I think that there is this desire to defend this perception of being a real man, which is so protected, which in a way is a kind of vulnerability too. And you could peel the layers behind that. What is your fear? What are you afraid of? What are you scared might
Well,
happen?
I think it's a very interesting topic. This like gender and perfume, because I told you that I sometimes wear a perfume as a costume. So
Yes.
sometimes I have a few typical masculine perfumes which I bought like when I was a teenager, but I just keep on buying them because they're really good perfumes. And then sometimes when I feel kind of like dandy and I put on a suit and like a bow tie, I'm like really taking that to sort of like make it extra gentlemanish, something like
Yes.
that. So, but I should actually try wearing my suit and tie and then just put on like fracas and see how that works. But so
Right.
yeah, so I sometimes I pick like a particular super masculine perfume to sort of like underline like yeah, I'm going for this look, and I want you to smell it too. So that, I guess that's a way of expression as well.
Right.
And but it's not something like I feel like that all the time. I just enjoy that perfume, and I enjoy it in the setting of me wearing a costume, and it's like an experience. Like every time you wear a perfume, you make a little journey with it. So I
Right,
think
right.
it's
There have been some instances in my review writing that I'll say that it almost feels like what they call cosplay, where
yeah,
it's like I'm imagining, like I'm
exactly.
pretending to be this person from
Yeah,
another
yeah,
time
yeah.
period or another.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
could
and
you
it,
could wear you could feel like you're a knight or a fairy or a wizard, and like
yeah,
accordingly pick your perfume that makes you feel like you have
right.
superpowers.
Yeah. I mean, there are times where I wear some, very sensible midline to budget types of fragrances that have stood this test of time, those classic drugstore scents. And I feel like this working class aspect of me comes out because I come from a working class background. So you're talking about, something like wearing Brut or Jovan Musk or something. Um, it's one of those budget kind of fragrances that still have their merit and still evoke so many memories for me because I remember when that was part of the zeitgeist in my childhood growing up in working class communities, you know so I can kind of just imagine that I am playing that sort of role. And I don't think there's anything odd about that. Maybe some people think, well, that's kind of taking fragrance a little bit too far, but why really? It's part of the fun of it, imagining that, the fragrance you're wearing is being worn by someone else and you're living vicariously through that person in another place, another time. And you're not turning into that person, but it's a sort of a vicariousness, like, and that can be kind of fun too. The possibilities are really limitless when you have this kind of relationship to fragrance, that it isn't like the same humdrum, I'm wearing this to go out and it just smells nice to me, and that's that. There's so much more that can be done with it, that can be had with it. I just want to mention that we are currently at 19. Let's try to aim for 30 likes. We have 18 people who are currently tuned in. We're a little over an hour in, and soon Chester and I are going to share 3 fragrances that are really meaningful to us, and we'll tie it into everything that we've discussed so far. If anybody in the chat does have any questions for us, feel free to chime in. We do have some of our loyal fans of Effluvium who are in the chat, and we always love to see them. But we have 19 people who are tuned in. Don't be shy. If you're willing to, share a comment in the chat, or just say hello, or share your own scent of the day, or tell us if you have some of these similar relationships or experiences with fragrance, or ways
Mm.
of expressing yourself, self-expression through fragrance. We'd love to hear from you. um, but yeah, this is a really fun topic because I mean, there's certainly fragrances that I don't feel match my personality, but I'll still wear them. Like something like Cacharel Anais Anais. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
the ideal Anais Anais wearer. I mean, it was marketed to young women in the 1970s, but I wear it and I still get great pleasure from it, because of what it evokes, and it's
yeah,
something beyond necessarily what it was intended for.
yeah.
Or I can even sort of imagine that, these, young women in the 1970s who were, you know, the other things that were culturally relevant to them, and they were wearing that. And that's kind of a fun thing to imagine as well. You're smelling it and you're kind of thinking of that time period, or you're thinking about the people who wore it at that time. That could be a fun activity as well. We have Mishi who mentions, I almost wrote here that wearing a perfume can be a
Yeah,
cosplay. Yes.
it is true.
Right, right, right. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that idea. And Chester mentioning, being a dandy, like, that's this Edwardian foppish type, and I have so many fragrances that would fit into that
A
category as
foppish
well.
type? What's a
Fop,
foppish?
like a fop, FOP. That's
I don't
that.
know that word.
Yeah,
A
yeah, yeah,
foppish type.
yeah.
Okay.
Another word for a dandy would be a fop.
All
And
right. Okay. I've learned something new today.
yeah, yeah. A coxcomb, as they would call it in the UK.
All
Um,
right.
Somebody who is very dedicated to their appearance and their, everything. Their monocle and their walking stick and their pocket watch. That whole get up. Scott Bear has chimed in. Hello, just tuned in. I gave up on gendered perfumery after finding Chanel Number 5 Eau de Cologne and Ma Liberté by Patou. Never looked back, and that is wonderful because
Um,
it's like reading literature. You're reading literature, and maybe in the first person, and the first person is female. It doesn't turn you into a
no,
female. you
exactly.
know don't be afraid of that stuff. It's
I
fine.
like the Chanel number 5 in that eau de
Yeah,
cologne
yeah.
concentration a lot, actually.
Right, right, right. No, no. I just wrote about Le Mans from Coty. Um, people might consider that to be very feminine, but I found aspects of it that transcended gender. Just the way that it feels is just it transcends all of those associations, and that's what happens once you open your mind and you care a lot less about it. It liberates you to enjoy the vastness of perfume wholeheartedly. You don't care about those things anymore. um, but for some people it takes time, like it took me quite a long time. Like I was like, no, I'm just going to stick with the stuff that was meant for the guys. And then niche perfume, I started discovering that they were unisex, and then I was like, well, it's a unisex, so that's okay. And then over time, like, it just didn't matter to me anymore. We have EA Nasir 939. Be like a scientist, unbiased. Yes, of course. Of course, I'm biased in the way that you approach something. Of course, it's okay to have a bias once you're actually smelling it, but to approach it without that bias, that just because it has been marketed to women, that you preemptively, you already premeditate your decision that no, I'm not going to enjoy it. It's not going to be for
Mm.
me.
But
And
it's funny, even if I don't know if you have that, Joseph, but when I was a little younger and I saw all these perfume ads when we didn't really have internet, and you saw these perfumes, we had these TV ads for perfumes, and so you saw all these types of men and the perfumes that they were wearing, and I was like, okay, so I'm a guy. That's a guy, but I'm not that kind of guy. So that can't be my kind of perfume. And one was a more recent was Aqua di Gio by, I think it's Armani, right?
yeah.
And I remember the ad was a yacht. I think it was a yacht with a woman in a white bikini and a guy in a white, I think a speedo or something. And that's what the ad was. And I
Mhm.
thought, all right, there, I will never have that amount of luxury in my life. I'll never
Right.
see myself in that yacht, in that position. So I never regarded giving that perfume a try until I was given it by someone, and I wore it, and I thought it's actually quite a pleasant perfume to wear. If they would have just marketed the bottle, like I would have bought it, maybe with a picture of a nice sea and sunshine, but it was just because it was those people in the advertisement that I didn't. Um, let's say that I didn't feel connected to them. That's the
Because they
right
were they
way
were
to
selling a
say.
lifestyle. They were
Yeah, they were
selling
selling a
some lifestyle.
lifestyle. They weren't
Right.
really wasn't for me
Yeah.
until I smelled the fragrance. I knew that I liked it, but I didn't like the ad for it. So that was marketed towards men, but it didn't work for me until I was given the perfume.
Yeah. Yeah. And that speaks to another principle in perfume appreciation and enjoyment, is that sometimes we need to sort of disassociate ourselves from the intention of the marketing, and also even maybe the narrative of the perfume, the ad copy. And I've mentioned this in past conversations with others, um, that sometimes I don't want to read the ad copy until I've already smelled it. Like I want to, like I don't want to I don't want to get it all mucked up by this. They're painting a picture for me. I want my own mind to paint the picture. So if I do have the misfortune of reading it, I just try to forget it. Like I try to forget, like, let me just try to erase that from my mind so that I have a clean slate and I enjoy it and have my own experience with it. And then what can be interesting is when I do that, and then I go back to like the story behind it or the ad copy or the narrative or advertising. It's funny to find how in some ways sometimes it will align and I'm like, oh wow, that's kind of cool, and other times it's like that's not what I imagined at all. It's funny, especially when perfume is advertised as luxury and then I don't get luxury out of it, or if something, that whole idea of like the lifestyle, like you said, like, this is supposed to evoke the finer things in life. But I might just happen to think of like a farm instead,
Yeah.
which for some people, I guess a farm would be the finer things in life. So yeah, yeah, it's sort of disassociating with what is being marketed to you, and just going into it blindly as much as you can be a fun activity, because you avoid all of those things that will create um, that bias ahead of time. You know, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it'd be a good time to talk about some of the three fragrances that you chose. Three, right? We
Yeah,
decided
I
on three.
chose three.
Okay, so and because we're only doing three each, we're probably going to be chatting a lot more about each of the three. Sometimes when we do these on Effluvium, we have a whole ton of them, but we're really going to get into conversation about each of these three. So so Chester, I'm going to have you share the first one that you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, so it's actually one of the oldest I have in my collection. I mean, and when oldest, I mean um, that I bought it first. I don't mean it's like a 50, 60 years old. It is by Givenchy. It's serious.
Serious, yeah.
Yes. I bought this when I was a teenager. Cost me lots of money, and I loved the bottle of it, the smell, and that is like a really masculine perfume.
Mm.
It's very aromatic. If I smell it again today, um, I don't know if it would do as well now as it did then. And I owned it in the splash bottle. At the time, you had a lot of perfumes in splash bottles for guys, and I actually quite love the idea of like splashing a
Yeah.
perfume on my cheek. I have to
Mhm.
open this. I couldn't find this after my bottle was empty in the original black Art Deco type bottle.
Mhm.
I got it here. Let me show you. I got this from my brother. He gave it last year to me. He bought it on an auction, which I thought was so sweet. So look, this is this bottle. Look, it's just gorgeous. And talking about the mind and how the brain works, I actually bought Xerius again in a vintage perfume shop, but it was the version that was in the normal Givenchy bottle. I think Gentleman in that type of bottle as well. And I was
Mm.
convinced I had not smelled that perfume for years, that it did not smell the same as from the black bottle. This is totally stupid, of course. So when I finally got this black bottle, I was like, oh, now I'm complete again, and I'm reunited
Nice.
with Mike Sirius, and it's a super aromatic perfume. I think the perfumer is Alberto Morias, if I'm not mistaken. So
I
correct me if
believe
I'm
you're
wrong.
right. It is Morias. Yeah.
Yes, and I think this is just a classic. I got this at the same time when I got Anteas by Chanel, which is another perfume I adore. So,
Right.
I mean, I love these feminine white florals, but these are two typical old masculine type perfumes that I just love. And if I nowadays, sometimes there's a release of a newer perfume brand that takes me back to these type of masculine fragrances, and that just makes me really happy. And one of them is by Francesca Bianchi. She
Uh huh.
released Etruscan water. And when I smelled that, it just took me back to all these masculine perfumes that I collected when I was a teenager. It was as if that perfume by her was sort of like the greatest hits of all these 80s masculine type perfume. So yeah, so Xerius for me holds a very dear place because it was one of the first perfumes I bought as a teenage boy for men. I felt like a man, but of course I was just a teenage boy. But
Just a boy.
serious,
And
just a boy.
I recently picked up this book on Pierre Dinard, The Shapes of Perfume, 30 Years of Design, and lo and behold, he
Oh my
had designed
god!
the original bottle
Oh, I
for
did not know
Xerius,
that.
the Art Deco skyscraper bottle. He also designed Isatis, which is the
Ah,
feminine
yeah, that's
counterpart, and then there is a text here and even a sketch of his drafting of the design of the bottle.
Can you show me the cover of that book again?
Yes, I posted about this weekend
Oh,
on.
right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book.
This
This
is
is the
beautiful.
translated English version. It's also in
Oh.
French. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's any text on the particular Xerius bottle because yeah, the text doesn't really align with whatever is specifically being shown. It's sort of like an ongoing um, text of it. Oh, look at this. He also did Obsession from Calvin Klein.
Ah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
wonderful book. Um, so, do you find that Xerius is an exception to what you tend to gravitate to, or did you find that it opened was sort of a gateway to other fragrances that were similar to it?
Yeah, I bought at that time. I bought this one. I bought Antaeus. I bought one,
Yeah.
a Dutch one, Van Gils. I don't know if you have that in the United States.
What
Van
is it called?
Gils. It's Van Gils. I'll send you
Oh,
a picture. It's
oh, okay.
super masculine perfume, and like Daniel Hechter, Karakter.
Character. Well,
Is
character.
it
I
is it
just
in
saw
there
in
as
this.
well?
I saw it in this book, and I love character as well. Yeah, let me see if I can find it. There is a picture of it. Oh, he designed so many great ones. There's Will Kipling and Clarence Auden Dinamassa and Maginois and Van Cleef and Arpels, Diable de Corps, Clizzi Uomo. I saw it in Basile Uomo. Hold on, let me see. I did see it. Oh, here we go. Lovely photograph of it too. There we
Yeah,
go.
it's
Yeah.
stunning,
Yeah.
stunning fragrance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's these type of masculine perfumes I like. And nowadays, a lot of perfumes that I smell that are marketed towards men, for me, what they lack, I'm not saying they're lesser perfumes. It's just certain DNA that's in these type of perfumes that I really love, and that's kind of like this aromatic mossiness that these perfumes have. This sort of like bold, aromatic, leathery vibes. One perfume that I like and that is still on sale and I love it a lot is Nicolai's New York Intense. It just like also
Mm,
takes me back to this type of
right.
perfumes. It's
Right.
got this sort of vintage masculinity about it, which you
It
don't really
does.
smell a lot anymore in modern.
Yeah.
But we talked about this vintage feelings. The same with a lot of the classics for women. They have this. I don't know what it is. They have this boldness to them that you don't smell like statement, more statement.
Statement. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that nowadays a statement is people are afraid to make statements as much. Like everybody's wearing black and gray and monochrome and beige. But I there is such a time period, especially in the 70s and the 80s, where people are so much more open to color, wearing color in their clothes and having a lot of color in their perfume as well. Nick S, hi, great to see you. All that stuff like ad copy or even gender marketing is just perceptual clutter, just assess every fragrance on its own merits. Yeah, go beyond
I agree.
the commercial aspect of it, and give something a shot. Look beyond that. Nick S also says they nailed the Art Deco aesthetic with that original Zarius bottle as well. So well, I have the cream Art Deco vase, and they captured the details fastidiously. And hello, Micah Shoemaker, Lauder for Men for Me. That's another architectural bottle as well. Another lovely choice. Quite a nice. That's one of my favorite men's fragrances from the 80s. So why don't we move on to the first one that I'll share?
Hmm.
And it happens to be one of those fragrances that was initially marketed to women, and I wore some of it earlier today, and that is this one, Aromatics Elixir. And Aromatics Elixir is one that I smelled a lot, not really remembering who wore it, where I'd smell. I just remember it. It's like sometimes your scent memory is so strong that even though you can't pinpoint exactly who or where or what, you know you smelled it. And you can the one thing that you can remember is you smelled it in a different time of your life.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for this, this was when I was starting to explore fragrance a little bit more. I was getting outside of my. This is a several years ago when I was starting to get outside of like being a niche snob, and I went through that whole phase for some time. And I saw the bottle, and I was so struck by the color of it, that fragrances just don't have this color very often anymore. They really are afraid to have a color that shows that there is this depth to it. It may not be attractive in modern times for a commercial perfume, but this was an indicator of there being some good stuff, having ambery and golden and even brown tinted juices. So I saw it, and it was on a perfume. It was actually under the counter, and it was languishing in a corner, and I could tell it was a tester bottle. And I knew from seeing ads over the years and just knowing about it. I mean, we're talking about maybe like 15, 16 years ago, just knowing that it existed but not knowing much beyond it. And I never put the two together. Like, I didn't know what it smelled like, but as soon as I like opened it, and I was like, I know exactly this I know this. And it immediately elicited these very happy emotions inside me, that it felt safe. It felt, I don't know about safe, I don't know, like, but it felt comfortable. It felt familiar. It felt um, like home. And my own mother didn't wear this, but it just felt that way to me. And what I would do for years is I would just go to the counter and I would smell it and I would think happy things, but I wouldn't be compelled to actually bring some home until finally, when I started studying perfume making, I became a lot more open minded, and I said, you know what, why not? And then I started wearing it, and then that's when it coincided when I was starting to learn about perfume, and I began to have a much deeper understanding of what it meant to be a Shipra, and what it meant to have patchouli play a role in a perfume. So there was like that, being beguiled by it, and then like breaking it down and then understanding it, but then still being able to go back to being like, you know, to be wowed by it without being, you know what I'm saying, like I understand all the details of it, the history, who the perfumer was, what was in it, and so on and so forth, but I could still go back to that original feeling before I
Yeah.
even knew all of that. I think that's so important to me, because if you reduce it to all of its components and you get really too technical and you get too, in your head about it, you can lose that feeling. And I never want to do that with my favorite perfumes. So when I smell it, I just think of that it's just that emotional response, you know?
Yeah. I think it's not even meant to be like that, that you sort of like overanalyze
Yeah, it
who
wasn't
made it or what's in it.
right.
I mean, it is about the feeling.
They didn't intend the consumer. They didn't want the consumer to do all of that.
No,
So you can always revisit it and
yeah,
revisit it with
true.
that with a fresh set of olfactory
Yeah.
receptors, if you will. Um, and to me, it just smells beautiful. And you know how I was mentioning earlier that I respond very well to things that feel very outdoorsy, very naturalistic, and this is definitely something that does that for me. Um, it sort of bridges that perfumistic quality that is inherent in a lot of perfumes that came out during that time period, and that sort of naturalism that you really started seeing in the late 60s and early 70s. And this was sort of like the apotheosis of it.
Hmm.
Um, but it's very, I think, it's become very meaningful for me as like that. It opened my mind,
Yeah.
and it really burgeoned an enthusiasm for classical perfume. So yeah, that's my first one.
Thanks. That's a wonderful story. I have to try that. I have to be honest. I've never smelled it.
Oh, you should. You should. I haven't smelled recent bottles of it. I've heard different responses to more recent formulations. I'm sure some people can share their experiences if they've smelled some more recent formulations of it. You even like versions of it from 10, 20 or more years ago are not
Hmm.
that expensive. So if you wanted to take your chance and get an older version of it, it wouldn't set you back a great ton of money. Algebraic says Aramis is still great. Aramis is another one that is very dear to me. So you're basically saying Aramis is still great in its current form. Scott Bear says, now I want to check out Aromatics Elixir. Herbal Amber sounds dynamite. There's a chamomile in it. And I think it was one of the first instances where chamomile made a significant appearance in perfume, because you think of the concept, aromatics elixir was supposed to be a therapeutic treatment from Clinique, more so than just your ordinary perfume. So there is this aromatherapeutic quality and some oils and accords in it that weren't really common in perfume. Sounds like it could be similar to Francesca Bianchi's The Dark Side. Algebraic says it is a very instructive exercise to match aromatics elixir in terms of copying it by nose. And Nick S says, I heard the chamomile note in vintage aromatics elixir was lovely, but recent stuff smells like cheap aroma chemical nightmare. Well, that's disappointing. So Chester, if you do see, I guess if we're going to base it on what he said, just try to get an older. I mean, you could just get an older version online. Just
Yeah.
kind of try to figure out. You know,
I'll try and smell it. But I
yeah.
know Francesca's one, the dark side. I know that one. So I mean, I love that one. So if it's like that, and then it's a perfume that I will love.
Mm, I can still smell it on my skin. I put it on several months ago, several months ago, several hours ago. That'd be crazy. I do shower, guys. I put it on a number of hours ago, and I can still smell it on my hand. Yeah. Why don't we have you share your next one, Chester?
Yes, I have it here right in front of me. Actually, I put here like lots of bottles. And I thought like, well, as we broadcast, I will just like pick some. But
Yeah.
actually, this is one that I really love a lot. I told you when I was starting to get into niche perfumes that I ordered like 24 samples and I like smelled all of them and like concentrated on how they made me feel.
Hmm.
So, and I smelled stuff from Aventus Creed to what is it, Ambre de Carthage by ICB, this kind of things. The number one perfume out of the 24 samples before then, on which I based my decision to buy it, was this one. And it's, I don't know if you can see it, is by Odin.
Ah,
And
Odin. Yeah, I
yes,
remember they were
and
big at one time. They were like
yeah,
a
yeah.
popular niche brand, and they had
Oh
some
yeah,
great
I
stuff.
still love this one. I bought two perfumes of them, but this was the first one, and it's called Rome, number 10,
Hmm.
Rome. And I just love this, and this is the kind of perfume that comforts me. So this is the one like I'd like to wear after I've cried. Put it on. It's like this nice blanket around me. It's also perfect. I love wearing this in winter. I bought it in winter, and what I love about this perfume is the coconut note in here,
Mm,
and it's not a typical coconut note. I love coconuts. I mean, I like eating it, I like the smell of it, but in
right.
perfume many times it always tends to go into this one sort of like beachy or tiara monoid type thing, which is
Right.
nice because I enjoy that.
Yeah.
But in this one, I love how it has this sort of warmth, coconut, sort of like woodiness, incense, it's quite powdery.
Mm.
Um, so I'm not sure if there's something like ionones in there, but it has this sort of woody, powdery, incensey, coconut feeling. It's gentle and comforting, and this is something yeah, I don't know. It just touches me. It's really visceral, the effect it has on me. So that's my first actual niche perfume that I ever bought, and that was worth spending every euro on. Just love this perfume. So that's Rome. It's kind of nice because the name Rome, to Rome in English, means sort of like to wander around, no? Doesn't
Roaming. Yeah.
it?
To Rome. Yes. Yes.
So it's kind of nice. It's got a nice connection to Walk with Me. Both are about movements a little bit, except
Yeah.
this is like more like steady paced to me, more sort of like relaxed, and yeah, it's comforting. This perfume. It's like if you need some shoulder around you when you're feeling a little sad, just like Rome by Oden. Love it. It's yeah.
And how long ago did you discover
Think
it?
I think 2012 or 2013, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. I don't know when it was released, but I think it's around that time. I'll
I
look it
just looked it
up.
up. It is the release was in 2013.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
Jean-Claude
it's around
Davy.
that.
He's the perfumer,
Don't even
Jean-Claude
know
Davy.
that he do a lot.
He did a
So-
lot. He actually had a pretty long career. He worked
Oh,
as
he did
yeah,
the other one I bought by Oden, Petrana. I see he did that one too, which
yeah.
has the same feeling, although it's bit for me a bit more like violet-y type of
Hmm.
perfume. Yeah, gorgeous perfume.
Oh, he did some quite nice ones back in the 80s. He did Montagne from Caron, uh,
Yes,
Nino
that's a
Cerruti
gorgeous one.
Parfum, which is a lovely opulent tuberose and fruity tuberose floral from the late 80s, Nino Cerruti Parfum. And let's see what else he did. He did some interesting. Oh, Cabotin from Grès and Marjolin from Jean Couturier. Did some things for, he did Orange Blossom for Joe Malone, Parfondette for Kenzo. Yeah, he has a great catalog of creations.
Yeah,
Very nice. I've never tried Rome. I've tried a few from that house. I remember they were just everywhere for a while. They were like a really popular niche brand
yeah,
about 12, 13, 14 years ago. And you don't really hear as much about them, but they had some great releases. And that one I'm not familiar with, and now you have me interested.
yeah. I think
So,
it's a men's clothing shop in New York
okay,
because
New York, yeah.
yeah, I visited the shop last time I was there. I visited in 2022,
Hmm.
and I bought a backpack in the shop, but they still had the perfumes and had some candles. So, but yeah,
Mm.
it's a really nice perfume.
Just a reminder to folks who are listening in, or if you are enjoying the playback, to hit the like on this live stream here on YouTube. For those who are tuned in live, we currently have 21 likes. Let's try to get that up to 30 if possible. If you haven't already clicked the like, be sure to do so. Let's try to aim for 30 in the next 10 minutes or so. All right, so it's my turn here, and I am going to
Yes.
choose. One from Frederic Malle, et Dominique Ropion, um, and it is Un Fleur de Cassis.
Mhm.
And This one does something to my brain. There is something just, it's ineffable. It's inexplicable. I can't really articulate what this does. But it bridges all of these interesting contrasts we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of contrast going on in Un Fleur de Cassis, because at once you think, oh, Cassis, it's, it's similar to mimosa, but it's a little different because it is another tree. It's another botanical species than the mimosa that we're familiar with. And it has some unusual qualities to it, olfactory, like textures to it that feel very different from mimosa. It feels very damp and very fuzzy and animalic almost. It definitely has that kind of raw naturalism to it that's different from, say, the absolute extraction of a mimosa flower. Um, but yeah, it's hard for me to really articulate what it is about Un Fleur de Cassis. It just feels both very modern and very not of this age, I guess you could say, because Dominique Robillon is experimenting with these ideas of what constitutes like a floral fragrance by putting florals in situations that they're not, you don't really. Yeah, it's because it has like the aldehydes that make you think of like those like mid 20th century um floral aldehydic fragrances, and it's very musky as well. um yeah, I just remember, I'll tell you why this one has stuck with me for so long. And it was my first encounter with Frederick Malle many years ago when I went into Barney's, New York. Barney's, New York was a great educational resource for me when learning about um, upscale and niche perfume. And I was really struck by the fact that they stored the perfumes in like almost like this chilled, like wine, like a wine chiller kind of compartment. I was like, what is so special about these perfumes that they're storing them in this glass case that is temperature controlled? And I spoke with the sales associate about Frederick Malle, and it just seemed like a whole between this brand and Serge Lutens back in 2007, 2008. It really opened all of these new doors for me that I wasn't even aware that fragrances like this existed. And I remember smelling this one and thinking it was just so otherworldly. And it was one that took me a long time to commit to buying a larger quantity. Like I would go back and I'd get a sample, and I would go back and pretend that I'd never heard of it before. Like, oh, what's that? Like I've never tried that before. Do you mind if I get a sample? And I was doing that for a number of years. And then when I started studying perfume making on my own and I was getting floral absolutes of different kinds, I got the Cassis Absolute. And I was so struck when I smelled it that I recognized it right away from Un Fleur de Cassis. And I thought to myself, there must be a pretty decent percentage of it in this. Um, and then it just went kind of full circle. I was like, oh, if I could only make something as brilliant and as daring as Un Fleur de Cassis with Cassis Absolute without it smelling too much like it. And I thought to myself, like, well, how can I do that? It's like it is like the keystone. It's like the core of it. Like it's been done. Like who could improve upon it? You know what I mean? Um, and there's so many strange aspects of it. There's aspects of it that just smell kind of dusty. There's aspects of it that almost smell sort of like ammoniac, but not quite like cat pissy ammoniac, like not to that level, but but just really bizarre, like something that I wasn't used to experiencing in perfume. And it really helped me kind of gain a better appreciation for something that has like a that's underlined with a sort of dirtiness. Like that's what got me into sort of like animalic fragrances is through it. So we have Jamal saying there is not much Cassie Absolute in it, but it is a lesson in dosing other materials to adorn it and not hide it. I definitely can smell it though. Like I could definitely when I smelled Cassie Absolute, I was like, okay, it's definitely used in there. But I can't imagine that a lot of it is used anyways because it's a pretty strong material. So I would imagine that compared to maybe how it's usually used in fragrance, maybe Dominique Oppion used a bit more than what is usually used. Jamal, can you educate us as to what percentage was used if you're aware of it? I would be interested. Um, but then once again, it's like I don't really necessarily want to overthink it. Like how was this put together? Like I just
Yeah.
it's really just this visceral. It just rambling about it makes me want to spray it. Like I'll put some on it on here. It feels like really granular, like little tiny um, I wouldn't say pollen because pollen would give one the impression that you're about to sneeze, but I can almost feel the tiny solid particles go into my nose when I smell it. It's pretty wild. And there's this interesting kind of waxiness, almost like it kind of also reminds me of primary school or what we call here elementary school in using like paste. There's like
Hmm.
a pasty kind of quality to it. So many things, so many things come to mind. Have you ever smelled this? Are you not familiar?
No, no,
Oh,
I've smelled
shit.
quite a lot, but I can easily go and smell it. I mean, they sell it quite near here in the shop, so
Well, thank you,
let's all
Michi.
smell it, and I'll let you know what I
You
think
you
of it.
should you should try. Jonki Send, aka Mishi, contains 4% cassie. I think that's what I remember reading at one point, and I thought to myself, that is kind of a lot of cassie absolute because it's a really strong material. So that would make sense. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, 4%. That would be enough to make it form the centerpiece. And I'm sure there are other things that are built around it that enhance it and expand it and extend it or whatever kind of you know uh, verb that you want to use. Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. Really, really, just not many things are similar to it. He really did something unique with Un Fleur de Cassis. So that's my second one. And thank you for letting me blather on about it.
Well, so I guess it's time for my third one.
Yes.
Before I move on to my third one, I have to say it was really difficult to just pick three,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
we were talking about special relationships with your perfume. So this one that I will have my third one, but first I would like to um, direct your attention to, let's say, an extra one. And it means a lot to me because my mom passed away quite recently. So I had to clean up our house together with my brother and sister. And then I stumbled onto her perfumes. And now, when I was young, I always saw these little catalogs of Yves Rocher lying around the house. Do you have Yves Rocher in the United States too?
So we don't have Yves Rocher retail here, but I am familiar with a number
Oh,
from Yves Rocher.
well, it's
Yeah,
if ever you come to Europe, it's the gift that keeps on giving you at a very decent price. Because
yeah,
I had some really nice perfumes that I found out were done by Francis Goujon, just at Yves Rocher.
yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I picked up from my mom's home when I was cleaning it this bottle of Clea. Just wanted to share it with you. So I haven't used it much, so I haven't created a lot of memories with it, but it's very floral, aldehydic, very vintage style perfume. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this was released somewhere that way
Oh, there
in
you go.
the 80s. I'm not sure, but the perfumer is Francoise Caron, and she created, if I am not wrong, correct me if I am, I think she created something for Brousseau, Ombre Rose, which I love that perfume. But I have to double check if
Yeah.
that's the same perfumer, but I think it is. So it's really beautiful white
Francois,
floral.
is this Francois Caron? Caron?
Yes,
Caron.
yes,
Yeah, yeah, Francois Caron. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's really lovely perfume, and just wanted to share that with you because it, even though I haven't worn it, it's precious to me because it's my mom's perfume, and I found it and after she passed away. So it's yeah, it's just so nice to have to be able to enjoy a scent that she's enjoyed. So that's that one. But for my third one, I gotta get a question very often. Okay, you have so many perfumes, but what if you could take only one to an island if you had to go? So it's very simple because we started this chats or this podcast. By I started it by telling you how much I love eau de colognes, and it was a tough pick between Acqua di Parma. What is it called? The black bottle. Um, Essenza? Yes, it's not. I don't think it's eau de cologne's concentration, but it's one I absolutely adore. But since I've been exploring this genre for quite a while, I have to say that this one it's my all-time fragrance favorite. Sorry, and it's Acqua di Genova. Uh, I don't even know what the brand is, but anyway, Acqua di Genova, 1853. It's such a
Mm.
I know it's refreshing,
Mm-hmm.
comforting. It's for all occasions, like for when you want to, when I want to open up myself and say, okay, I'm cheerful, let's go out for a party. If I'm a little sad, I'll spray it on just to cheer myself up. It's so summery. It reminds me of the south of Europe. This is a perfume that just always lifts me up, always. And in the end, I think if you have a fragrance that just adds something positive to your state of being, then you have the right fragrance. And this one for me, definitely, if I had to like leave everything and just could keep one, it would be this one. Yeah. Well, maybe I would take the empty bottle of Xerius with me too, but yeah, but no, definitely, I love that one. So if you could try that at some point, then I think you
Yeah, could
should.
you put that in the private chat, and then I'll
Yes, I
copy and
will. I
paste it
will.
in
It's
the
for everyone that loves eau de cologne style perfumes. Try it. I'll put it here. Uh, Aqua Genova 1853.
Here we go, and then I'm
I
gonna
think it
grab
was
that.
released in 1853, so it's already been around. And I mean, the nose that is listed on Fragrantic, I don't know if that's the original nose of this fragrance, but it's just beautiful. It's also available as, I believe, like a 250 ml bottle with this huge, nice bulb spray with a tassel on it. Just totally glamorous on your beauty table, vanity table.
Your
Yeah.
dressing table.
Your dressing table. It's just really nice. It's like,
Delightful.
and it's like just spray it on like that. It's like I wish I
Spray
could.
with
Yeah,
abandon.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes, very nice.
So in your third,
My
I'm
third, and
very
this is going to be
curious.
it. I think you've already done three, and I'm going to be doing my third. And
Yes.
this one is from Oritz Lagrand.
Oh, I love that brand.
This is a Chypre.
Ah, that's so gorgeous. That one.
Okay, and I think
Ah,
it would be fine for me to spray this on my other wrist.
ah,
I think that wearing both Influe de Cassis and Chypre will be just what the doctor ordered this evening.
that
Um,
is such a beautiful one.
yeah, and what a, what the mystery behind this one too. The the perfumer or the formula. Like, is this a formula from what age? What did they have to do to? I, it it's just that it leaves me stunned.
I think that what's so beautiful about that one, I actually ordered, I bought another one from them, Muguet de Fleury, but they gifted me samples of the chypre mousse. And what I love about it is it's almost like it's sort of a necklace. And like every
Yeah.
time you look at this necklace, something different lights up. There's
Yes.
so many different facets in this perfume. It's crazy.
Right. Like if you're looking at sort of like a, something prismatic, and you get
Yes,
like this
exactly.
this tint, and like a hue, and it shape shifts, and something kind of moves forward while something else recedes, and then it comes back. There's this amorphousness about it. You're absolutely right. And mm, and it's green, but not green in the sense that I normally associate with green fragrance. It's damp, but it's a different kind of damp that I've ever experienced in a fragrance. It feels very much like the understory of the woods. Like it's like all of the vegetation that would be in the woods with the trees above, but the trees are not the main event. It's everything underneath the trees. So it would be the mushrooms and the lichen and the ferns and all the little plant specimens with berries and tiny blossoms, and
So layered.
so layered. And that tarragon note with that there's a lot of I pick up the estragol, that chemical constituent that makes tarragon smell the way it does. I pick it up so much here. It's almost kind of licorice like, but not licorice like. Um, it's very mossy, and I always tell people, these people are like, "Oh, we can't do anything mossy anymore. We can't have mossy fragrances because of restrictions." Well, all the versions that I've smelled have been after those restrictions were really reduced the percentage, and it smells mossy as anything I've ever smelled. Um, it smells more like actual oak moss than even oak moss absolute. Have you ever like taken like
Yeah.
it smells more like that. Like if you were to crush it and like dampen it and then smell it, it smells more like that than like extracting it from the moss. And there's clary sage. I'm smelling like the clary sage. There's this musky kind of umami almost too. There's so much like umami, like savory, and that could, that kind of like it almost reminds me of if you take bolete mushroom. Have you ever used mushroom absolute? Have you ever dabbled?
Never, no,
Yeah,
no. Be interesting to explore.
CEP, yeah, CEPES absolute, which is very savory, very meaty smelling in its 100% undiluted form, almost to the point where you smell it and you're like, how on earth could you put this in a perfume? But then you dilute it to a really low level, and that's when it really blooms. And it reminds me of that here. I'm not saying that it's used, I don't know that for certain, but it smells similar to that very diluted. Seeps is a type of bolete, which in
Yeah.
itself is a mushroom that has, if you take the cap and you turn it over, instead of gills, there's pores. So it's
hmm
in the bolete family. Very, it's like meatiness, like chestnut, like not a sweet chestnut either. Like the if you were to crack a chestnut and you would just mash the chestnut with, you don't add any sugar or anything, that earthiness and the meatiness. Yeah, so this is why it's meaningful to me, because it does all of these things to my brain. It has that many facetedness, um that amorphousness, that and it's eminently outdoorsy. It's eminently naturalistic. There's so many smells in it that you wouldn't even typically find in in your standard chypre. I mean, it's chypre mousse and it is the chypre structure, but they take it to an extraordinary level. And it's another one that's polarizing too. Some people smell and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't want to smell like dirt and plants and stuff." I love it. I just
It's
love
beautiful.
just absolutely beautiful. Jamal says, I love tarragon oil. annoying if a restriction of 0.018% in the final product. Now, I'm just thinking to myself, like, how could that? You'd really have to make sure other things in that formula are sheer, because that would get buried. I would say with such a small amount. Wow, that's a recent restriction. I remember when I was playing around, it was definitely not that small a percentage. God, that's depressing. But if I mean, this is a I don't know how old this bottle is. It's before they changed the cap, but
Hmm.
I would say it's maybe prior to that restriction to tarragon oil, or maybe there's estragol replacers or tarragon replacers. Or have you ever dabbled with the idea of having a tarragon accord?
No, no, no. Oak moss, yes, but not.
Yeah. What I do recall in my notes is tarragon is great in kind of creating more of a top note to moss. So I could see where tarragon would be a good complement. Hey, misspelled tomato. Thank you for dropping by. So yes, that's my third one. I've been awfully rambly and head in the
No, it's a
clouds.
gorgeous one. It's a gorgeous one. I bought my Muguet Fleury and then I got the samples with it. I smelled them at home. I thought like I should have bought the other one and just got samples of Muguet Fleury, but okay.
So, dihydroestragol. And what would be the limitation on that if that were to be used? I want to help Chester out if he ever wants to explore.
Well, yeah. I mean, I love the smell of tarragon, but I've never
Yeah.
worked with it.
I'm finding that these dehydro versions of these constituents, like I think dihydroeugenol, has less of a restriction as well. That's very interesting to me. Um, Thank you for that. Well, how about we do this? I'm going to turn Swallowtail on. Well, this brings this effluvium to a close. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And Chester, I want to thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
for,
back.
yes, thank you for having me and thanks everyone for joining in. And I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, this is a good chat. And Chester, if you could stick around for a little bit, I know it's awfully late at this point, but I just want to chat with you a little bit after we,
Yeah,
in
that's fine.
backstage, after we sign off. Folks, tune in 2 weeks. I'm going to have another effluvium, and it is going to be a discussion on the complementing and the complementing of and the intersection with style and fashion. And that is going to be with somebody that I recently met in the community as a fragrance enthusiast. His name is Elliot Dupre. You can find him on Instagram. I will put in his handle so you can check out his Instagram, but also check out his TikTok. Apparently, he has a pretty decent TikTok following, 185,000 followers,
Wow.
and he's quite a charming man, impeccable taste. He and I are going to have a discussion in 2 weeks about fragrance and complementing an intersection with fashion and style, the visual with the olfactory. So we're going to have a conversation on that in 2 weeks. Check that out. Thank you very much, Algebraeus, for making that distinction here. And thank you very much, Claire. We're going to sign off for now. Everybody be well and take care. Chester, just hang in there. We'll go
I
backstage.
will. Thank you,
All right.
everybody, for joining.
Take care.